So, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man just wrapped its first season, and I gotta say, it was quite charming. It's worth mentioning that outside of stuff like classic Looney Tunes and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, I'm not the biggest consumer of the animation medium. I wholeheartedly respect animation as an art form and think that animators do amazing work. I'm not discrediting the art, I'm just saying it isn't my personal jam a lot of the time. I have friends who consume animation like nothing you've seen before. I'm talking everything from DC animated movies to weird girl volleyball anime. I'm looking at you. And aside from a few outliers like X-Men 97, I just don't really vibe with it. So when I tell you that this show is pretty cute and entertaining, I mean it. So this animated series follows Peter Parker on his way to becoming Spider-Man in an alternate universe very similar and at the same time very different from the MCU. Before I get into the many aspects of this show that I absolutely adored, I'm going to get my issues out of the way first. And no, the fact that this universe has a black Norman and Harry Osborn was not an issue for me, and I think if that is a criticism you level against this show, you're kind of a dummy. Norman Osborn is one of the best things about this show, and if you disagree with that, fuck you, it's my video, I can say whatever I want. The first thing about this show that didn't work for me some of the time was the voice acting. And most of the vocal performances are really good, so when one isn't good, it just sticks out a little more. Specifically, the actress who voiced the character of Pearl was just pretty weak to me. There's a scene in episode 7 where she has to put on a very emotional performance, and to put it in the nicest way possible, it was just not very convincing. But to focus on a positive of the voice acting, Hudson Thames does a great job of capturing the essence of a young Tom Holland in his performance without feeling like a direct imitation. The second thing about the show that didn't really work for me were the character stories that had nothing to do with either Peter Parker or Norman Osborn. It felt like the writers of the show spent a lot of time nailing their stuff down, and anything that didn't have to do with Black Green Goblin or Spider-Man, they just kind of half-assed it. Which was really disappointing because I actually grew to like all of the side characters to varying degrees, so I would have appreciated a few more rewrites when it came to their stories. I'm sorry, but I could not give two shits about the fact that Nico is jealous that Peter found a new friend and wants to add him to their dynamic duo. And the show spends like 2 or 3 episodes pontificating on the fact that Nico is very protective of her and Peter's friendship. They've known each other for like a month. That's stupid. To move on to things I liked about this show, I want to talk about something I have heard a few of my animation nerd friends criticize: the animation itself. Again, I am not the most well-versed person on the topic of animation, aside from like classic Looney Tunes shit, but I gotta say, I jived with the style. It's very clear the creator's vision for this art style was to utilize a combination of 2D and 3D elements with a distinct retro vibe that is very reminiscent of a classic comic book. Some of my friends have intentionally avoided the show because of the animation style, which I think is a shame because I would say that the story is so strong it kind of outshines any personal animation taste you might have. And speaking of the story, oh boy yeah, was it extremely refreshing and unique for the character of Spider-Man. As far as Peter's basic story arc goes, I'd say it's your pretty typical Spider-Man fare. A young kid has to learn what it means to become a hero while balancing his teenage life with his newfound responsibilities. But I think this show is a very classic case of it's not always the story you tell, it's how you tell it. For instance, in this universe, instead of Peter being mentored by Tony Stark, he is mentored by Norman Osborn. And yeah, if you're one of those Tom Holland, I hate Iron Boy Jr. fans of the character, this story might not be your cup of tea. A lot of the story heavily relies on Norman upgrading Spider-Man's tech to help him fight bad guys, but I was fine with it. And might I just say, Coleman Domingo really makes this version of Norman likable from the delivery of his dialogue alone, but not in a way where he comes off as a super nice guy, because you can tell this guy's up to some pretty shady stuff behind the scenes. He just comes off as an intriguing character that you want to learn more about. Like there's this moment after Peter gets his ass kicked by the Scorpion and Norman tells him that with great power comes great respect, and you as an audience member are in Peter's shoes, so when he feels disappointed by this, you feel disappointed. On top of the Norman Osborn angle, something else I liked about how this story differentiated itself from your typical Spider-Man stuff was that in this universe, Peter is actually really cool. Like yeah, he's still a huge nerd, but in this universe, he's very well accepted by his peers. The moment they introduced the character of Lonnie, who's like the star quarterback of the high school, I was very buckled in for some kind of classic Peter Parker getting bullied montage, but this show shakes it up and doesn't take the easy way out. And that's something I kind of just overall like about the multiverse concept. You can change a character's circumstances just a little bit while still remaining true to the core concepts that make them great. I'm currently in the midst of reading Ultimate Spider-Man, where Peter doesn't gain his powers till he's like 35 and married with 2 kids with MJ. And between that comic run and this show, it has very much made me hungry for more Spider-Man. There's this comic run called Spider-Man 24/7 where Peter takes a multiverse trip with the Fantastic Four. And because time works differently in the multiverse, what was like 3 days to them was a couple of months in their timeline. And when Peter comes back, J. Jonah Jameson has become the mayor of New York, and his obvious #1 goal is to take down Spider-Man. And so Peter decides to go Spider-Man 24/7 fighting crime and kicking ass for like 5 days straight. It's a really dope story. I highly recommend it. But no matter how cool, bad, or wacky the story surrounding Spider-Man is, there is always a public demand for him. And you know why? Because Spider-Man is a character that anyone can relate to. Anytime I'm having a bad day, you know what I do? I flip on Spider-Man 2 and it reminds me that things ain't that bad. Anyways, I don't really have that much more to say about this show. I only know like 2 other people who have enjoyed it, and I just thought I'd make a quick little recommendation video to spread the word that this is a very cute and creative little alternate universe departure for the webhead. Give it a watch. It's good. Trust me. 7.5 out of 10. Goodbye.